Hello, Professor Kent Lee here, and in this video I'm going to talk about English pronunciation and the particular problems that Asian students have with English pronunciation and things that they should watch out for accurate pronunciation. And I'm not necessarily going for accent-free pronunciation. There's nothing wrong with an accent. A majority of people who speak English in the world speak English as a second language. Therefore, a majority of English speakers in the world speak English with an accent, whether it's a Spanish accent, a Russian accent, an Arabic accent, a Korean or Japanese or Chinese accent. There's nothing wrong with an accent. Don't feel bad about it. It's cool, actually, as long as you can be understood. But I will talk about some things that might hinder communication, problems that might cause communication breakdowns because they can't understand which word you're saying, or things that lead to a significant accent, and you might want to reduce them to sound more clear and comprehensible. So we're going for comprehensibility, not for any kind of accent-free English. That for a lot of people who learn English as a second language, an accent-free pronunciation is not realistic and it's not necessary unless you're going to be an actor. You're going to get a job in Hollywood, and that requires some intensive coaching. Okay, I'm just going to teach you the basics of what you need to know to be aware of your pronunciation. So in this video, I'm going to use the International Phonetic Alphabet, this set of symbols that linguists use for representing the sounds of languages of the world. It is a system that can be used to represent all sounds of all languages in the world, regardless of how it might be spelled in the writing system of a particular language. It's a universal system for phonetically representing pronunciation accurately for linguists. So in some countries, your books might deviate from the IPA. They might use simplifications or shortcuts, and that might lead to confusion. We are going to first look at consonants, problems that Asian students have with consonants, and then vowels, and then things like rhythm and various things that make up rhythm. Mainly stress, what we call stress. All right, let's look at consonants. Now, one of the first things that comes to mind is S before front vowels. A front vowel is a vowel that's produced in the front of the mouth, particularly up high in the mouth, like E. And I've noticed this is problematic for Japanese and Koreans because in some languages, the S before an E sound becomes a she. She becomes a sort of friction or fricative sound with a different tongue position. But you don't want to do that in English. It can cause misunderstandings, like sit, city, citadel. It needs to stay as an S. So in Japanese and Korean, the she is just a variant of the S that occurs in that particular context before an E, but not in English. It has to stay in S because it might sound like a sh, which is a very different sound and can make it a different word. So sit, city, try the phrase, I think she should sit. Try to say that 3 times fast. Citadel, cicada, those lovely insects that come out in late summer and sing in the trees. Americans tend to hate them, but I love them. Also, decision, recite, this needs to stay an S sound. Dental fricatives. So dental, these are sounds made with the teeth, and they're fricative, that is, they're produced by friction. So the tongue is close to the teeth, and friction is created as the airstream is forced between the tongue and the teeth. The tongue is either between the upper and lower teeth, or it is behind the front teeth. The. Either way, whatever works for you. You don't have to string your tongue out too far, though. So there's a voiceless version. There's no vibration. You're thick. And there's a voice version. The the. So they're both spelled TH. So I use the angle brackets like that to indicate spelling, the spelling system, the writing system. And then the slashes indicate what is an IPA symbol and what is a regular or distinctive sound in the language. So the voiceless, we call voiceless, there's no voicing or vibration here. thick. We use the Greek symbol theta for that IPA symbol. The IP symbol is from the Greek letter, the Greek alphabet, the Greek letter theta. And that's because it occurs in a lot of Greek words. It occurs in Greek, and including a lot of Greek words that have come into English. So this sound, of course, occurs in some Old English words, thick, thin, and such, but also in words from Greek. So a little tip, if you see new words that you don't know spelled with TH, especially if they are academic, technical, scientific words, it's probably from Greek, and it's probably pronounced th. About 99% of the time, that will work. A general guideline for you. Thermometer, ethereal, urethane, some technical words. Now the second one, the voice, the letter there, that symbol is that IPA symbol, comes from Icelandic and Old Norse writing systems. And that is with the vibration down here. This first of all occurs in function words. So function words are kind of minor grammatical words, articles, pronouns, determiners, conjunctions, and things like that. The, this, that, these, those, thus, there, therefore, and also in some Old English word pairs. So in Old English, there was a pattern of taking one word with and then changing it to a different kind of word, like from a noun to a verb, or from a noun to an adjective, by voicing the into a z. So bath, bathe, take a bath, to bathe. Teeth, tease, the verb to tease. That's when like babies or puppies, their teeth are coming in and they have a lot of soreness in their gums and teeth and they need to chew on something. That's teething pains. They have to tease. They have to chew on something to relieve the pain. North, northern, south, southern. So the voiceless becomes voiced in these word changes. Next we have palatal consonants. So think about she in English compared to she, the sound she in Korean, Japanese, and Chinese. It's different. In the Asian languages, your tongue is flat like this, and your what's called the tongue blade, the front part of the tongue, is coming close to sort of the top of the mouth, the roof of the mouth, sort of the alveolar or gum area or palatal area, the roof of the mouth, and it's creating friction. She. But in English, the tongue is curled up like this, and you're using the tongue tip, and it's kind of pointing to between the alveolar and palatal areas, a little bit further back, I think, than the Korean, Japanese, Chinese she. It's pointing up and a bit further back. It's kind of curled like that, and it creates friction. It doesn't touch. It creates friction. She, as it does that. Compare the Asian she and English she. Rush, fish, English. And it's important to get the tongue position right so that you can, for example, if it's at the end of a word, you can just say fish. Asian speakers from some languages especially will tend to say fishy because it's hard to end the word without putting an extra vowel at the end. That's kind of a transfer or carryover from the syllable pattern of the first language of an Asian student, especially Japanese and Korean, but in English it's fish. You don't say fishy, but fish. You keep the tongue curled up like that, shaped properly, so you can say clear fish and end the word with the sh, fish. English. You don't want to say Englishy, that's not English. English. Okay, the same is true for the voice version. Take the sh, she, and then voice it, add vibration here, zh. So that's all it is, this voiced sound zh. Your tongue doesn't touch, it's just friction. Zh. It doesn't touch, so don't say beige or anything like that. Beige, rouge, pleasure. So this occurs in words from modern French, like beige, rouge. Words like pleasure, which are from Old French and Latin. And then words like vision, decision, which are Latin patterns. Pleasure. This also is true for these consonants. So you take the sh and then you touch your tongue up there. So you get something like a t with the stop and release of air, but then the friction also ch. And that's different from the chi in Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Likewise, j, you voice it j, stop release friction j, and that's different from like the j in Asian languages like Korean, Japanese, and Chinese. So if we compare the English cheetah with maybe the way it would be pronounced say in Korean, cheetah with the flat tongue, cheetah, in English cheetah with the tongue curled up like that. Cherry, church, not churchy, but church. Again, the tongue needs to be curled up so you can stop the ch, like in church or birch, without adding an extra vowel at the end. Likewise, jump, judge. So spelled J or DG sometimes. Judge, not judgy, but judge. Badge. So you end the word, you end the syllable with that sound by making the tongue curled. Badge, birch. Okay, some other consonants. The S and Z, or the Z sound, I think is problematic, maybe for some Asian speakers, more so people of older generations who were not taught pronunciation and were not exposed to any natural English as children. For my students, I've taught in Seoul and Busan, and in my experience here since I've been in Korea and since 2008, I don't think I've noticed younger people, college students, really having a problem with the Z sound, but older Koreans do because they were never taught properly and they were just never exposed to English at a young age. I mean, natural, real English, like media. Z is just an S, and then you add the vibration, the voicing, z. It's easy. Z. So if you're tutoring somebody who's learning English, if they have trouble with the Z sound, it's z. Tongue doesn't touch. The tongue position is exactly the same as the S, no touching. While at least older Japanese and Koreans might make it a z. It's the tongue doesn't touch. It's just an S with the voicing z. Buzz. Again, not really a problem, I think, for younger Koreans that I see. Similarly, a problem for older Asians, not so much, I think, people today, as far as I can tell. The F and the V, of course, older generations would confuse F with P, and the V and the B. Of course, B and P, the lips close to stop and release the air. They're stop sounds. F, teeth and lips create friction. The airflow is forced between the teeth and the lips to create friction for F, and then the voice V. Again, I don't feel like younger Asians have a problem with this, but older generations do. L and R, again, I think is more of a problem for older generations, as far as I can tell, or people, at least in Korea, younger people in Korea, I don't see much of a problem with this, more so with older generations. L and R. So actually the correct IPA symbol for the English R is an upside down R symbol, because the regular R in IPA is a ra, like in Spanish, but not important here. If your books use the regular R letter for the English R, that's fine. It's not a concern unless you're also learning Spanish right now. L and R. So L, your tongue touches up in the gum ridge behind your teeth. La, air flows around the side of the tongue. La. Okay, easy. R, ra. Your tongue points toward that area, and it moves as air flows or glides over and around the tongue. Ra. And that's it. It's not terribly hard, but it takes practice for some learners because it's not a common sound in the world's languages. Red. Squirrel, squirrel. That's a hard one for some. Squirrel, squirrel. Okay. Particularly, the similarly, similarly, lurly. You have to, for some, you may have to practice some tongue gymnastics. Similarly, do an early. So you have to train your tongue to do some gymnastics. Similarly. Okay, do the early. Touch it for there. So it might take some practice if you're having trouble with that. Those are the main kinds of cases where you have an R and L together, where I think even some younger Koreans may have some trouble. Some, not all. But I can understand how squirrel can be hard to say. It's a hard word even for Europeans learning English too, by the way, for some Europeans. So that is a common problem for, say, Koreans and for Japanese. And Chinese might have a bit of an accent with R, because in Chinese, your R is made further back in the mouth. That is, the tongue is curled further back, like And then sometimes, especially at the beginning of a syllable, it kind of takes on a friction quality, zh. And you have to be careful not to put any friction in there. Mostly you have to make the tongue go a little bit more forward, a bit more toward the front of the mouth, more toward the alveolar area. Red. Not red, but red. Another issue for a lot of Asians is consonant clusters. We have words together like cluster, C and L, or cluster. And Asians will, especially older Asians, will tend to kind of break them up into separate syllables to fit the syllable pattern of their language. But in English, you have to be careful not to do that. It might sound a little odd or hard to understand. Smart, one syllable, smart. Not smart, but smart. Start, not stat, but start. Start. Sphere, spring. We can have lots of consonant clusters in English. Floor, truffle. So practice saying those as like one syllable, sphere, spring, truffle, two syllables. The second one is extra short, by the way, truffle. It's an unstressed syllable, truffle. Silent letters. I've heard students complain about silent letters. So we get some silent letters due to sound changes in the history of English. So for example, the silent K in knife, well, that's because maybe up to 1,000 years ago in English it was pronounced knife. The vowels also changed in English, by the way. Knife, give me knife. Gnaw. I want to gnaw on this. The silent GH was originally like a h sound, which disappeared from English about 1,000 years ago and either became silent, or in other cases the h became F, like in laugh. So sight was sicht, light was licht, taut was taucht. Then we have words like laugh, which I guess was lauch. Okay, laugh. And that's why these were sound changes. These were sound changes in the language that happened a long time ago, but the spelling did not change. Finally, there are some silent letters because they are words from French, like buffet, bouquet. By the way, the main stress is on the last part. All right, now let's talk about vowels. So an important thing to remember about English is we have a distinction between long vowels, a, o, e, u, and the short vowels, a, I, u, e, o, a, u. Then we also have the extra short vowel, schwa, and some variants on schwa. I won't go into the variants here, but kind of schwa. We call it the schwa, that upside down E. It's called schwa. That's a Hebrew name because it's an important vowel in Hebrew, so linguists use the term schwa for this vowel. And it's an extra short vowel that occurs in unstressed syllables and only in unstressed syllables. So we've got let's compare the beat and bit vowels. Beat is long because it's tensed. So the tongue is a muscle, and so it can be tensed or relaxed. Tensed or relaxed. And that's where this distinction comes in English. Beat, it's long because it's tensed. And so it's E. And bit is short because it's relaxed, and so it's a different sound altogether. It's not just a short E, but it's bit. Your tongue is relaxed. Pretend you just woken up and you can't talk. Your mouth is numb. Bit. Okay. It's lax. Relax your tongue muscle, make it short. E has to be longer. So this is an important distinction in English. So many words are distinguished between E and I. There are so many word pairs, so many cases where you could have miscommunication because you don't say it long enough. Like key is longer than key in Korean. Key. You need a house key. It's long. Reach, rich. Scissors, reason, risen. Streaked, strict. And yes, Asian students have sometimes had misunderstandings because they mispronounced the sounds, even just not saying the E long enough. Okay, I've heard this personally from my Asian friends. O, there's a long O, boat, because it's glided. It glides into oo, and it's important. Boat is not the same as bought. Oak is not the same as awk. Low, long O, is not the same as law. Note, not the same as not. By the way, in many varieties of American English, the O becomes sort of an ah, law, bought, awk. In fact, I grew up in Texas and we didn't have the O sound in Texas. I guess we were too poor to afford all of our vowels. When I moved to the Midwestern U.S., I learned to say O, like in law and bought. In kind of like some parts of the southern U.S. and the western U.S., California, O becomes ah, which might be confusing. Okay, A. The bait vowel is different from the bet vowel. A is A-E. It's a double vowel also. A double vowel we call a diphthong, a double vowel A. Bait. It's long because it's a double vowel. So don't make it a short I. We don't really have it appear I in English. We have A and we have E. Bait, bet. Attained, attend. Paper, pepper. Spatial, special. Different sounds. And then another kind of tense lax distinction, kind of like the beat distinction, the distinction, and this is kind of less common because the short is a lot less common in English. Not too common, but let's say I would say to my son, "Look, I am your father." Darth Vader gets to say, "Luke, I am your father." The is long and it's tense tongue muscle. Is short and relaxed. But fortunately, that the lax is not too common in English, although it occurs in some common words like would, could, and should, and book. Now, another feature of English is the stress system. English has unstressed vowels. We're talking about vowels still, but we've got this extra short unstressed schwa, and then some variants of schwa, which I won't go into here. So in these sentences, the underlined vowels are schwa, and it could be spelled in different ways, which is confusing, I know. These are short, unstressed syllables, so you may have to learn to listen for these kinds of super short syllables. In Asian languages, syllables tend to be similar or the same length, but in English, it really depends on the vowel and the stress. If it's unstressed, it can become a schwa. Not always, but it can become a schwa or something similar. And so you might need to listen to something and follow along the text, an audiobook or pop songs with the lyrics written, on the screen before you, to get used to listening for this, because it can make a difference, like whether something's or the can make a difference. So listen to these sentences as I say them. It's a warning about improper storage and isolation. Notice the schwa syllables, the underlined ones, are very short. It may be hard for you to hear if you're not used to this. It's a warning about improper storage and isolation. Notice I'm also linking words together. We do this in English. If a word begins with a vowel, it tends to link with the word before it many times. It's a warning about improper storage and isolation. Or, I read the paper about radiation poisoning. I read the paper about radiation poisoning. Very short. Okay, the schwa is very short, and it's hard for some to listen to. Plus, we also have stress shifts. Sometimes the pronunciation of a vowel changes when suffixes are added on to the end of a word to make a new word. Nation becomes national. Notice the long vowel becomes short. Nation, national. Profane, profanity. I bet this drives you crazy, huh? I would imagine. It's kind of weird. This is a Latin pattern. These are Latin words from Latin, especially academic words. So this is a Latin stress pattern that English has taken on. Serene, serenity. Code, codify. Mode, modify. Soul, solitude. Provoke, provocative. And so on. I'll provide you you can go to a web page, and I've got a list of more of these if you are interested in having fun with them. So this leads into stress itself, the issue of word stress. What you might call accent is the word stress, the most prominent syllable in a word. And we produce it in three ways. One, there is an intonation change. Your intonation goes up or up and down. So for example, when I say intonation, on the A, intonation, the intonation is rising and falling. Intonation, intonation. And it also sounds louder. It's longer. Intonation, it's longer than other A sounds, in other words. Intonation, and that syllable is longer than the other syllables. Intonation, length, intonation, and also loudness. It sounds louder, the volume or amplitude. Intonation, not necessarily because you're raising your voice, but you are putting a little more volume, and of course it's also because of the intonation that makes it sound louder. Intonation, volume, amplitude. So notice the intonation and length on these syllables. Syllable, intonation, pronunciation. Okay, it's really important. It's an aspect of English rhythm. English has this rhythm because of the different stress patterns. Main stressed syllables, unstressed syllables, and with longer words, you even have kind of a main or primary stress than a secondary or lower stress. And I won't get into that here, but it makes a difference. So for example, this is my favorite. Subject, a noun. The verb, I was subjected to unimaginable horrors. I object to this object. Okay, can make a difference in the meaning. Also, stress patterns in compound nouns. A white house. I grew up in a white house, but I will probably never live in the White House. That's a compound noun. Compounds usually have the main stress on the first element. The White House. A greenhouse. A greenhouse. You might live in a greenhouse if your parents like really interesting colors. It would be funny, very funny if you lived in a greenhouse. Like you really love your strawberries, huh? Greenhouse. Other compounds, computer monitor, door handle, video camera, and so on. The main stress is usually on the first element. Now the word stress patterns, just regular words, it's complicated, like regret, egret, baguette. Doesn't make any sense, right? Telephone, phonology. There seem to be no clear patterns here. Inertia, Pangea. About this word kilometer or kilometer. When I was young, when we first started using this word in American English, we said kilometer. Later, it became kind of more naturalized to kilometer, more of a natural English pronunciation as it became a common word, kilometer. Weird, huh? And it may seem crazy. That's because the English stress system is complicated because it comes from different languages. You have patterns from Old French and Old English, Old Germanic parts of the language. Then you have a lot of Latin patterns like phonology and kilometer. It's a Latin stress pattern. Most academic words and new academic and technical words that you come across will probably follow the Latin stress pattern, where it tends to be on the second or third syllable from the end, second or third last syllable, depending on which vowel is longer. But that's a general rule, and it may not be practical for you, I don't think. Maybe more helpful if you're into linguistics. There are also Greek patterns like telephone and modern French patterns like baguette. Depends on the word, where the word comes from. It's complicated, and I'm not going to try to teach you stress rules or patterns, at least not in this video. It's awfully complicated. The main thing is to understand how to pronounce the stress, like intonation, the length and the intonation change. And with words from Latin, academic words, it will tend to be on the second or third from the end. Otherwise, it's complicated. It's really messy. English is a very stressful language, right? It has very complicated word stress patterns. And I can't really teach them to you here. Maybe later after I do some research on it, I'll make some videos someday where I try to simplify it for you. That might take a few years though. Okay, these are the main problems that Asian students will have in English. Word stress, rhythm problems, certain vowel problems, especially with long versus short vowels, and then consonant problems, particularly the palatal consonants like the shi, chi, the shi, ch, j, zh sounds, those particular problems. Those are the main areas where, and consonant clusters also, those are the main areas where Asian students tend to have problems and may need to work on their pronunciation, or at least becoming aware. May first help just become aware of your pronunciation in English, maybe record yourself and then listen to yourself and see if you hear any of these problems. And that can maybe tell you where you need to go, where to focus on. You're going to listen to media materials, pop songs, videos, TV shows, do a lot of reading in order to maybe get your brain more used to English spelling and sound patterns. Okay, that's very brief advice. Maybe I'll expand on it later in videos someday in the future. But for now, I wish you luck with English and hope this helps you, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.